COVID-19 cases, also known as the coronavirus, continues to increase in New York City and throughout the world. Today, we are joined by Bronx Borough President Rubén Díaz Jr. to discuss the impact it's having on the borough of the Bronx and the importance of strengthening the community during this difficult time. Welcome.
Thank you. How you doing, Rhina? I just want to thank you and BronxNet for continuing to do your job in informing the overall Bronx community and family.
So, sorry, Borough President, I somehow got disconnected for a minute, but I think I'm coming back. There I am. This is all new to us. We're all working remotely. Thank God for computers at this particular time. And thank you for taking the time to be with us. I think it's important that the community hear from you and how your office is addressing this matter.
Well, we've been, I'm here in the office, and we've been working with the essential staff and directors and my communications team. And basically what our job at this moment is to advocate, to have conversations, to get information from the state and the city governments, as well as the federal government, and coordinate that for our borough, and sort of just to manage the flow of information, and try the best that we can to have Bronxites be informed, Bronxites to work cooperatively, and to make sure that we have the best opportunity here to minimize the amount of exposure, the amount of sickness, and unfortunately the amount of deaths that are going to happen. Now, with that said, I want to explain to Bronxites why we are at this place. And so, again, with the most information that we have, the more we can minimize fears and misinformation and hysteria. So
yeah, I think it's important. I'm sorry. I think it's important that we go from the beginning, right?
Yes. So here it is. There's an organization called the WHO. That's the World Health Organization. The World Health Organization is obviously, it's in its name. It's a worldwide organization of scientists and medical experts. And every year, what they do is that they monitor viruses, disease, any health ailments that they see triggered in different parts of the world. It's the reason how every year, for instance, for those, whenever we hear about the flu and we hear about a new strand of flu, they're the ones who warn the rest of the world that we're going to have the flu, it's going to be an uptick, or maybe not, there's going to be a new strand. And then they offer testing, they offer ways to get to the vaccine, or offer a way to get the antibodies for
the antibiotics, right?
Antibiotics for said disease. So back in the last fall, the World Health Organization told the world that there is a new COVID strand. Now, remember, guys, COVID has been around for decades. This strand, COVID-19, known as coronavirus, is a new strand. So they said that this is a new strand, and here is the testing that we recommend so that when the time comes, you can test the people in your population. And this way, when those who test positive, you can quarantine them, make sure that they stay in place somewhere at home or some facility so that they don't spread the virus. Every big country took that test that the World Health Organization gave to, that they offered, except for the United States. So the United States said, no, this administration, the president said, no, what we're going to do is that we're going to come up with our own testing mechanism. So what happened with that is the testing that we did initially was flawed. So what that does is that it puts us behind the ball. And now that coupled with the fact that we saw that it wasn't taken so seriously coming out of the White House initially, we didn't have the right testing. So now we've come to the point now where the virus, unfortunately, has spread not only around the world, but here in the United States, here in New York City, certainly here in the Bronx. And what we need to do more so than anything, because this is just the beginning, what we need to do is to realize that there is going to be what's called a curve, meaning there's going to be an uptick. The more testing that we do now, thank God that the federal government allowed for the state government and the city to do its own testing. As of yesterday, we were doing 8,000 tests a day in the state of New York, which is a good sign that we're headed in the right direction. We still need more testing that needs to be done, and I'll get to that in a minute. But the reason why we need the testing is so that, and the reason why we need people to stay home is so that you don't spread it, even if you don't have the symptoms, even if you don't know that you have the coronavirus. We need people to stay home because in the state of New York, we only have 53,000 beds. And what we are anticipating, if we continue this route with the disease is spreading, in 3 to 4 weeks, we'll have 110,000 hospitalizations. Do the math. That's more than twice the amount of beds that we have now. So we're working on doing more testing so that people can be quarantined. We're working with the Army Corps of Engineers, Governor Cuomo is, so that we can create more beds around hospitals. We are trying to do the best that we can. We're hoping that the president invokes what's called the Defense Production Act, or the Defense Procurement Act, which allows for factories to produce more ventilators, masks, gowns, and so on and so forth. But we need everyone to cooperate and just stay home, because when that curve ticks up in 3 or 4 weeks, what we want to do is make sure that we don't have so many people while we don't have enough hospital beds. So we don't want people to be scared. We just want you to be mindful. We want you to help out by just staying home, stay in with your family, self-quarantine, read a book, play board games, do the best that you can to survive the next, 1 or 2 weeks without having to come outside as normally as you would.
So I've read in certain places, that there's a possibility that we may be ordered shelter in place.
Right.
And I know that's not necessarily your call. What are the possibilities of that actually occurring?
So those are conversations. Certainly, I spoke with the mayor yesterday. He is looking and is seriously considering doing the sheltering in place model that they have in San Francisco. The governor, however, is not in favor of that at this moment. The governor wants to make sure that when we put out information, that we do so in a way where we don't continue to stoke the fears that people have. In many ways, Rhina, the fear is worse than the virus.
Right.
In many ways, it happens in my family, my wife's family. The uncertainty, the anxieties have really overwhelmed people, even more so than the sickness. Folks who aren't sick are, feeling much more anxious than they would if they were sick. So what we want to do is make sure that people just stay home. Self-sheltering comes in many different forms. What people need to realize that both the governor and the mayor they're not interested in what we perhaps see in movies where you have martial law, where you're going to have tanks on the streets. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're basically saying is that people need to stay home. And as we see this unfold, if folks are not listening, and I still see too many people out on the streets, I saw people still hanging out last weekend. If folks are not prepared to do this on their own, then government will then step in eventually with different mechanisms, and sheltering in place is certainly one of them. But we're nowhere near there yet.
Okay. And thank you. Thank you so much for the information that you've shared with us. And if people wanted to learn more about how this is actually developing, where would they go?
So
where should they go?
So there's a lot of misinformation out there. What I would hope is that people go to COVID 692. That's COVID 692. For those that speak Spanish, go to COVID ESP, like in Espanol. So it's COVID COVID ESP 692. And that's where you'll get a lot of the updated information on the virus. You'll get a lot of updated information as to where we're seeing cases throughout the city and the state of New York. And of course, a lot of the elected officials, we're getting information. We're doing the best that we can from my office. My team is like a situation room here. We're here, so you can go to our websites. You can go to my Instagram. That people can go to Facebook or Twitter, and we're putting on a daily basis. We're putting up information.
Okay, and so before we go, to those who think that this isn't as serious as it is, what would you say to them?
It is extremely serious. But with that said, Rhina, what we don't want is for everyone to go and think that they need to go get a test. We want the test to be for those who have dire situations, for the elderly. And when we say the elderly, it doesn't mean that because you're young, you're invincible. So we've seen an uptick, and France has seen an uptick on a lot of the young people. The millennials out there, you're not invincible. So whenever we say elderly or the frail or those with compromised health conditions or pre-existing health conditions, it doesn't mean that because you're 19, 20, 21 years old and you don't feel any symptoms that you can go out and party, that you can go hang out with your friends. No, because you can still get it and be asymptomatic and then bring it home to somebody in your family who then will get sick and unfortunately may die. But so we're going to do more and more testing as we go along. We're in the process of identifying vehicular testing site with the state of New York in the way that they have it in New Rochelle. The Dr. Barbeau from the Health Commission of the City of New York, what she says is that even if you have symptoms, the best thing to do is just stay home, get through the virus. The overwhelming. I mean, we have elected officials like Richie Torres. He is positive, but he's home. There's been no vomiting on his behalf. He is, feeling normal, except that he tested positive for corona. Once you get through the virus can exist in your body for 9 to 14 days. Then we've already seen cases where folks in New York City tested positive, went through the motions, and now they've been tested again after 2 weeks, and they're already negative. That's going to be the case for the overwhelming majority of the population. So we don't need you to panic. We don't need you to fear. We don't need you to have the fear. Yes, we are asking people to stay home, but when you go to the supermarkets, we don't need you to hoard either. Please leave things on the shelves for your fellow Bronxites. So, we are all in this together. And hey, we're the Bronx, right? We come from a certain pedigree. There's a certain DNA. We are resilient. We are strong. We're going to get through this as a family. It's going to be in the long haul. This is serious. And remember that no matter what you're hearing today, is going to get even more serious in the 3-4 weeks, maybe month and a half to come. But we'll get through this. The economics are grave, and people are worried about their jobs and whether or not they're going to get compensated for wage losses. The federal government is working on all of that as we speak. We've been speaking to the city of New York about a grace period for those who can prove a hardship, so that they don't have to pay rents over the next 1 to 3 months. If you can still pay your rent, pay your rent.
Right.
Get your taxes done. You know what I mean? We're going to start identifying homebound seniors and increase the amount of food deliveries. I know that there are a lot of people, because we are the Bronx, who want to volunteer. They've been contacting us. We don't necessarily want an army of volunteers. We want people to stay home. As need basis, we'll be asking certain people, but we're leaving that for the professionals. We're leaving that for first responders.
Wow.
And so we in this for the long haul. It is serious, but the best thing that everyone could do now is just stay home. If you stay home, you come in less contact with other people. They come in less contact with other people. And so we can contain this. So when the curve comes and there's a surge, our healthcare industry can be adequate and will be able to meet the needs of that surge. If we don't listen now, we're going to regret it.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing it into simple terms so that people understand why they're being instructed as such. And hopefully we can have you back on again. We thank you so much for taking the time to be with us at this moment. I know we're going through a lot right now. And again, for you guys, for more updates from the Bronx Borough President, you can visit bronxboroughpress.nyc.gov.
Rhina, last words. Stay home. Don't panic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.